It was a business decision, not a moral decision, said Bob Guccione, editor and publisher of Penthouse magazine during that hectic end of the summer of 1984. Now, Guccione is referring to the recently released September issue of Penthouse that has just hit the newsstands and is causing a stir. A stir that has paid off well for him with the 5 million copies that have already been sold. It is well understood that Guccione and Penthouse are flourishing. However, another is not. The week that is proving to be heaven on earth for Guccione is hell warmed up for 21-year-old Vanessa Williams, who is the currently reigning Miss America and now a woman scorned. Miss America and scorned, 2 words before this point that were practically strangers to each other. Yes, today we are going to be talking about one of the biggest scandals of the 1980s, the scandal that would cause Vanessa Williams to lose her title as Miss America 1984.
By the way, we heard from a very reliable source that there's some pictures that are coming up of you in Penthouse magazine. What's your comment? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I hung up the phone and called my lawyer immediately and said, listen, I don't know what's going down, but you need to figure this out.
So it began in 1982 when Vanessa Williams was 19 years old and home for the summer after her freshman year as a musical theater major at Syracuse University. She took a job as a receptionist/makeup artist with a local photographer who was considerably older than her named Tom Chappelle. Vanessa said, I had worked there for a month and a half when Tom Chappelle mentioned several times that he'd like to shoot me in the nude. I had never posed nude and I was curious. I was 19 years old. I agreed. He assured me that none of the photographs would ever leave the studio. He assured me I trusted him not to do anything with the photographs. That was my error. I signed an application giving my height, weight, color of hair, and my talents. I never told anyone about the pictures, not even my parents. I did not think it was a concern. We had made an agreement they would never be published. She would also add, Tom was my employer but had also become my friend. I met his wife and kids. He paid me on time and was respectful. Why shouldn't I trust him? Well, flash forward to September 17th, 1984. Williams is competing in the Miss America pageant as Miss New York. The pageant that year was held at the Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Now, Williams' true motivation for joining the pageant was financial. More specifically, the $25,000 scholarship, which in those days could afford most, if not all, of Williams' education. For this very reason, a win could be a dream for more reasons than one. Then this happened.
One of them will be the new Miss America and the winner of a $25,000 scholarship. And our new Miss America is Vanessa Williams, Miss New York.
Vanessa Williams was now the reigning Miss America. Now, Miss America is not a big thing now, but it certainly was when Williams, now 20 years old at the time and a junior at Syracuse, took the title that night. The pageant back then was compulsory viewing for much of the public, and winning it was atop many little girls' to-do list. And besides, Williams wasn't just the reigning Miss America, she was also the first Black Miss America. Black women had only been allowed to compete in Miss America since 1971. Thank God I have lived long enough that this nation has been able to select the beautiful young woman of color to be Miss America, said Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman elected to the United States Congress, who took Williams' victory as a sign that the inherent racism in America must be diluting itself. However, there was one person watching Williams' historical win who had other things on his mind. Well, it turns out Williams' trust in Chappelle to respect their agreement was gravely misplaced. It seems seeing Williams in her reigning glory had encouraged Chappelle in his opportunity to take advantage. Chappelle would subsequently start shopping the pictures that Williams had taken those few summers ago, and Chappelle was aiming for the big leagues, Playboy magazine. However, that would not be where the photos would end up, as Hugh Hefner would end up rejecting the offer. He said, "Vanessa Williams is a beautiful woman. There was never any question of our interest in the photos. But because they clearly weren't authorized, and because they would be the source of considerable embarrassment to her, we decided not to publish them." Now, many praised Hugh Hefner's decision, but some questioned his true motivation in doing the right thing. After all, it was Hugh Hefner that had famously secured the rights to nude photos of Marilyn Monroe without securing her consent. And while he might have rejected Chappelle out of deference to Williams, he had another reason. You see, the photos were not Playboy's style. A statement made to Time magazine by Playboy spokesperson Dave Salyer explained that Playboy did not use the so-called lesbian material, which he classified Williams' pictures to be, as Williams' pictures featured her with another woman, and we will get to that in a moment. The photos that ran, we would not have run. We're too conservative. We just don't do the two ladies together thing. Now, the photos may have been too vulgar for Playboy, but they were not for Penthouse. Unlike Hefner, infamous Penthouse publisher Bob Guccione was more than okay with being labeled the bad guy. Penthouse already had the reputation of being a more vulgar and much less sophisticated publication than Playboy, and much to its own credit, it never claimed otherwise. To many, Hugh Hefner and Bob Guccione were players in the greatest rivalry in porn. According to Leslie J. Gold, public relations director of Penthouse, it didn't even occur to Guccione to pass on the Williams photos. Bob didn't see it the way Hefner saw it. He thought Hefner missed out on making a lot of money. Bob's way of thinking was that if he didn't publish the photos, someone else would. So, in July of 1984, news soon broke that the next issue of Penthouse to be released would feature explicit photos of the still reigning Miss America. More specifically, it was that Thursday of July 19th. That day, Vanessa Williams had done what was unbeknownst to her last public appearance as Miss America at a store promotion in Little Rock, Arkansas. The news would reach nationwide by the next day. Now, at first, pageant officials within the Miss America Association did not believe the existence of the photos to be true. However, the truth of the photos, in the form of hard copies sent to the organization by Penthouse, arrived, and it was soon realized that the situation was extremely serious. As for the rest of the public, well, in an age before the internet and leaks, they would have to wait and buy an issue of Penthouse to see what all the fuss was about. At the price of a copy, of course. A price that Guccione was counting on and promoting with an impromptu press tour. "They're nude and they're very revealing," said Guccione to one media outlet. "They're rather like other photo layouts that appear in Penthouse. There's nothing coy about them. They're quite exciting." Now, the news was rapid, and it even quickly reached Williams' hometown of Millwood, which the press hounded upon. Even Williams' old classmates from her high school were interviewed. "I'll never be able to look at her in the same way again," recalled one classmate, reportedly with a laugh. On July 20th, 1984, a committee for the Miss America organization met to decide what should be the fate of Williams in her now tainted title. That afternoon, they voted to give Williams 72 hours to resign. The vote was reported as unanimous, but it was reported that at least 2 of the members wanted a public drowning of Williams. Chairman Albert Marks, we will also get to him later, said he believed Miss Williams would relinquish the crown after she has a chance to think it over, because she would realize nude photographs of a Miss America would seriously jeopardize and irrevocably damage the pageant. And what would happen if Williams had refused to resign? Marks refused to say. We will cross that bridge when we come to it. Now, in the meantime, Williams' family is advising her to refuse to resign her title. In fact, her father spoke in her defense, saying, "Our feeling is that she should continue with it," said Milton Williams by phone. "We feel she's earned it. We feel it could be seen as an admission of guilt, of having done something that was wrong and distasteful, and we don't feel like she did." In the midst of the much outpouring of sympathy was the outrage, most of which came from within the Miss America organization itself, more specifically Albert Marks, who was chairman and executive producer of the Miss America pageant. Marks, who was never paid for his work on the pageant, was so closely identified with it that he was often referred to as Mr. Miss America. Marks presided over the pageant in a tumultuous era that included its transition from radio to television, the 1980 dismissal of its longtime master of ceremonies, and now as the ouster of the 1984 Queen Vanessa Williams. Upon seeing the photos of Williams, Marks was just as, if not more traumatized than perhaps Williams herself. As a man, a father, a grandfather, as a human being, I have never seen anything like these photographs. Ugh, I can't even show them to my wife. Now, it would be no surprise that a conservative older man of his time like Marks would be troubled by the photos. However, Marks' outright disgust and trauma was one that was so exaggerated, even to the puzzlement of the media and press. Now, Roger Simon of the Chicago Tribune would get down to the bottom of the real reason behind Marks' anguish in an interview where he asked the Miss America chairman, "What's so wrong with Vanessa Williams posing in the nude?" Marks surprisingly gave a remarkably transparent answer that was extremely telling of the sociality of the entire ordeal. It was not just that she was nude. It was the kind of pictures. She was in lesbian situations with her legs spread to the skies. Simon continued his questioning. If she had just posed nude, say like the photos of Madonna and Playboy, would she have retained her crown? Marks: yes, I think she could have survived that. We could have put it off to a college kid prank. Now, in the midst of all the outrage and press, Bob Guccione decided to come to the defense, at least in his own mind, of Williams, slamming the Miss America pageant as being out of step with reality. He would say, to equate morality with nudity is unrealistic in this day and age. Some reports at the time suggested that Penthouse and Guccione planned to take part in the legal defense of Williams. Penthouse editor Peter Block would go on to say, "A lot of people despised Bob as the world's worst piece of garbage for publishing the photos. But he was truly incensed that the Miss America people pulled the crown from Vanessa, and he offered to underwrite 100% of her legal expenses should she choose to sue." Bob Guccione's help at this point was not needed and far too late. The damage had already been done. In respect to the committee's decision, Williams would give up on her Miss America title on July 23, 1984. It was the first resignation in the pageant's history. The last 2 months of the reign would be taken over by runner-up Suzette Charles. Her name would also forever be officially recorded as Miss America 1984. Charles, who ran as Miss New Jersey, made the announcement at a hotel press conference. "I am Suzette Charles, and I am Miss America." Before accepting the title, Charles was allegedly questioned by pageant officials about any potential skeletons in her closet, as they did not want any more surprises. "I could never do that," said Charles, referring to posing nude. "I am too modest. I don't want anyone to see what I have." Now, it seems that Charles avoided and was reluctant to make any statements concerning the scandal or Williams herself unless directly questioned, saying of the infamous photos, "I'm not in a position to judge. I haven't seen the pictures." In the meantime, more information regarding the negotiation process of the photos of Williams came to light when Bob Guccione was charged in a lawsuit by 2 businessmen who contended that he cheated them of profits. The plaintiffs, Stephen Brightman and Howard Mann, sued Guccione in federal court, claiming he bought the pictures directly from the photographer, Tom Chappelle, who agreed to be their partner in selling the photos. However, Guccione said he did not know of any agreement between Chappelle and the plaintiffs. From a New York Times article dated August 1st, 1984. Mr. Guccione said he had negotiated with Mr. Brightman and Mr. Mann for the photos, but did not buy them because they did not have an appropriate consent form from Miss Williams. Several months later, he said Mr. Chappelle came to him with a complete release form signed by Miss Williams. He said he verified her signature through handwriting experts, then bought the photos 5 months ago for an amount he would not disclose. One fact that many may or may not know is that the September 1984 issue of Penthouse is technically the most controversial Penthouse issue, and the reason has nothing to do with Vanessa Williams. This particular issue featured pictures of an underage Tracy Lords. Lords, whose real name is Norma Kuzma, had dropped out of high school at the age of 15 with the intention of entering the adult film industry. With the alias Christy Elizabeth Nussmann and a new driver's license that stated that she was 20 years old rather than 15, Kuzma signed with a modeling agency and soon after booked many jobs, one of which included photos for Penthouse that ended up in the September 1984 issue.
From making some of the same mistakes that I made.
And I guess, was it 15 years old? Is that when you left school?
Yeah, I dropped out of school.
You dropped
when
out of school?
I was a sophomore.
At 16 years old?
No, I was 15 when I started.
Oh, you started in films? You were 15 years old?
I was 15. Well, I didn't start in films. I posed for Penthouse when I was 15.
Oh, really? Now that's news to me. I didn't know that. Does Penthouse, is that something that would be typical for them to take a 15-year-old and?
Well, I should hope not.
See, I would hope not either. Or did you lie on a release form, or did they even check into it?
The first day I went into the agency, I told my first little white lie, and then that lie just sort of grew.
Now, during late May of 1986, around 3 weeks after Lord's 18th birthday, authorities were informed that she had been underage when she appeared in the adult movies. The owners of her movie agency and Excitement Video Incorporated were arrested and federally prosecuted. Now, although shaken from the situation with Lords, Penthouse did not take much of a hit from the debacle. A spokeswoman for Guccione said Lords showed identification indicating that she was over 18 before the pictures were taken. However, it still does not mean that the September 1984 issue is legal to own. Leslie J. Gold, Penthouse's then vice president and director of public relations. The issue was beyond huge, was beyond anything. When it hit stands, I was fielding over 100 calls a day. And then, 2 years later, the FBI came to the offices and took away all the issues. Yeah, it was a felony just to own. The legal implication of the Tracy Lords situation would put a gray cloud over Guccione's exploitative intentions with Williams. However, still, any criticism aimed at Guccione that concerned his morals did not faze him. In fact, he was more than willing to allow history to repeat itself again, this time with another. In September of 1984, the world was gearing for the 58th annual Miss America pageant that was to be held in Atlantic City, a year after Vanessa Williams won her title. That same week, Bob Guccione flooded media and news outlets when he went to the press with an astounding claim. Guccione alleged that he had 350 color slides of a Miss America contestant who he did not name posing nude and would publish them if she won the beauty pageant in Atlantic City that weekend. They were taken about 18 months ago, Guccione said just before the pageant. I'll publish them if she wins the title Saturday. Penthouse magazine spokesman Cy Preston said the pictures would not be printed if the contestant was not crowned Miss America. The reasoning being that there's more interest if the pictures are of the winner. Guccione, however, predicted that the contestant, which he claimed to have pictures of, would end up in the top 5 because that's how great she is, he said. Now, Charlene Wells, Miss Utah, would be the winner of Miss America that year. Wells, who was a Mormon Sunday school teacher, reportedly told the press that after a year of scandal, the Miss America organization was looking for someone like her, crediting her Mormon beliefs, refusal to drink, gamble, and engage in premarital sex. Needless to say, no pictures were released, and it was never known who the contestant Guccione was referring to, or if his words were a bluff altogether. Still, the saga had not come to a complete end, at least for Vanessa. That November, another issue of Penthouse magazine hit the newsstands with more sexually explicit photographs of the now disposed Miss America Vanessa Williams. This time, it included an interview with the man who took the infamous pictures, Tom Chappelle himself. I really didn't think she would lose her title. My honest impression was that I was doing nothing that would hurt Vanessa's career. Chappelle said when he heard Williams was crowned Miss America, he was really proud, but it blew my image of what Miss America was supposed to be like, adding that Williams is not this innocent little spring chicken that everyone is trying to portray. As for the photo release, Chappelle said he gave Williams the normal ASMP, which stands for American Society of Magazine Photographers release, which is the standard of the industry. He alleged that Williams took it home and brought it back signed. When questioned on why he decided to sell the photos, he said he decided to sell because his then partners, Steve Brightman and Howard Mann, who would later sue Chappelle, said they could make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, the amount that Chappelle was paid for the pictures was never disclosed by either party. However, some reports estimate the price was for $50,000. I took some very beautiful pictures of Vanessa and Amy together, and I sold them to a reputable corporation, a company who showed them to the public. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, Amy refers to Amy Wessel, who is the other woman that appears in some of the photos with Williams. She was 18 years old at the time the pictures were taken. Now, the media storm surrounding Williams somewhat forbade Wessel's own story to be told. However, Wessel, unlike Williams, was not a public figure, and the publicity the photos received were considerably invasive to the quiet life she would have most likely lived had they not been released or associated with a high-profile figure like Williams. The release of these photographs has been very distressing to Mrs. Wessel and has caused her considerable anguish, said Wessel's attorney. She is not a model or an entertainer. She has recently been married. Still, the saga had not come to an end for Williams. Much more trials would prove to be ahead of her in the release of the January 1985 issue of Penthouse, which promised even more explicit photos of Williams, this time with a completely different photographer by the name of Greg Whitman. Whitman, seeing the big explosion from the Chappelle photos of Williams, had contacted Bob Guccione and Penthouse with his very own photos. Guccione said he had authenticated the model's release in the same way he verified the release that he said Chappelle had provided, through 2 independent handwriting analysts. I'm satisfied that I published the first set, and I'm pleased to publish these, said Guccione. It was the only thing I could do. It's the hottest non-political news story in a decade. Williams acknowledged that she had signed a model's release before she posed for the second photographer, Greg Whitman. The photos with Whitman were reported to have been taken in the summer of 1982 as well. Williams denied, however, that she had signed such a form for Tom Chappelle. She said, "When I first heard that Penthouse was publishing nude photos of me, I assumed they were by Whitman. In my naivety, I had signed a release for Whitman, but I felt badly about the pictures, and a couple days later I went back to him to get the negatives. At the time, he gave me an envelope and said they were all in there, except for a few color slides, which he said he would only use for his portfolio. I did not give my consent to him or Penthouse to ever have them published, used in any magazine, or any way. Nothing." Williams opted for various lawsuits against Penthouse, Chappelle, and Whitman. In the end, however, Williams dropped all the lawsuits against Penthouse magazine and the 2 photographers after concluding that she signed a model release for both of the photo sets that would later force her to lose her crown. Her mother, Helen Williams, would speak on her daughter's behalf, saying, "You can never litigate ethics for people."
Well, I think what Penthouse did to Vanessa Williams is a classic example of subordination, and the subordination of women is the key phrase in our definition of pornography. What Penthouse...
In case anybody's forgotten, Miss Williams was the former Miss America who resigned her throne or her crown after the pictures appeared in Penthouse.
Yes. Yeah. Against Vanessa Williams' will, without her consent,
That's
over her
Absolutely untrue.
Over her objections, Penthouse published a whole spate
Excuse me,
of photographs
she did not
of her.
object.
What Penthouse did...
She signed a model release.
Now, as triggering as the story of a scandal like this can be in its retelling, there is a happy ending for Williams. There is much obligation to tell about the highest points of one's life as there is the lowest. Vanessa Williams went on to have a remarkably successful career as an actress and singer. Her versatility as an entertainment icon has been one of the most praised among her peers. In 1989, Williams told a reporter that revenge against Penthouse would ultimately be hers. "So many people have gotten burned by those people that I think they'll eventually get it in the end and die a slow, painful death." Williams' statement may have been a foreshadowing. Bob Guccione would forfeit Penthouse magazine in 2003. His fortune declined after many failed investments, and the popularity of Penthouse diminished greatly after the growth of free online porn. Bob Guccione would die in 2010 in Plano, Texas, after a battle with throat cancer. Tom Chappelle, the photographer who took and released the first set of photos of Williams, would be hounded by the press following the release. Being behind the camera did not shield Chappelle from any of the same negative press Williams received herself, especially when the media arrived at his doorstep in the small town of Brewster, New York. When the story broke, Chappelle and his family were besieged. One tabloid reporter remarked that his editor threatened to publish pictures of Chappelle's children if the photographer refused to grant an interview. Although Chappelle was rumored to be planning the release of even more photos of Williams, he instead opted to flee towards what many said was Connecticut and was never seen again. In 2015, organizers of the Miss America pageant apologized to Vanessa Williams, 32 years after she was forced to hand back her title. She was also invited to be a judge at that year's pageant. Williams' father, who unfortunately passed away in 2006, never got to hear the apology. However, Vanessa's mother, Helen, who was present, got acknowledged as well.
Long-awaited vindication for Williams and her mother.
I want to apologize to you and to your mother, Miss Helen Williams.
Now, it seems that in the end, the last word will belong to Williams. In the fall of 2022, almost 40 years after the scandal that for the best and worst impacted the trajectory of Williams' life and career, it was announced that a limited series about Williams' ordeal was in the works with Sony Pictures Television. This project is incredibly personal to me, said Williams. There are so many inaccurate and untrue accounts of the events surrounding this period in my life. And as a mother, and as a Black woman, it is important to me that my truth be told and be documented from my perspective. This is not just a story about racy photos. It is about misogyny and racism, and I want to shine a light on that for future generations. I was not only able to survive what could have been a career-ending scandal, but rose above it, and have achieved a body of work I am extremely proud of.